What's going on? It's Chris, the Dating Doc. In this podcast episode, we're going to discuss how popular dating apps such as Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, etc., take advantage of your attention for their own gain. This episode will dig deeper into the effects of information overload while also explaining the implications of attention economics taking over the organic process of dating. Stay tuned. So the time of this recording is November 2nd, 2020, the day before the elections. And so this podcast, again, may seem my style, maybe seem a little bit distracted. I wrote notes down so I can make sure that I stay on path. Normally, I outline my podcast episode and stick to the topic at hand, stick to the main subjects and points I want to make. But I did structure this a little bit more. So if I ever sound inauthentic or things of that sort, I'm frankly a little bit distracted by what's going to happen tomorrow, and not fearful, but distracted because, again, it's the big unknown, what's going to happen. And originally this podcast with this episode was going to focus on politics. I was going to get into something that I've spoken about before, which was politics and dating, right? How our various views, how they converge when it comes to the organic process of dating. But I decided to go with information overload because I actually think that's more of a holistic issue that goes beyond social political spectrum. It's actually a lot of what's causing our analysis paralysis and our issues with picking the right kind of partner or keeping the right kind of partner. And it also delves into the political spectrum. So tomorrow, yes, I mean, at the time of this recording, who knows what's going to happen? I'm not sure if we're going to start rioting, if people are going to forget that we're Americans first and they'd rather be right than get along. I think that's where we're at right now, where we, however you want to look at it, whether it's a combination of the media, men and women in suits, that have just created this storm of us hating each other, Americans hating each other. And you look at the Visigoths, you look at the history of the Roman Empire, the political infighting and the civil wars caused the Roman Empire to fall. Again, back then they didn't have social media. And we're at a point now where we would just rather latch on to the drama and the debate rather than finding ways to find a common ground. So we are a toxic relationship. We gaslight each other. We have narcissistic tendencies, but it's acceptable. It's socially acceptable. It's a weird thing. So I'm hoping for healing after tomorrow. I'm hoping that people have the strength and grit to be patient with each other, to try to understand each other, and to be neighborly. If not, America falls, regardless what you believe in, regardless what side. If we forget to be humans first, we're definitely going to forget how to be Americans. Well, I'm going to challenge to see how long you'll stick for this one, because ironically, it's about information overload and attention economics. Unless you're one of my many loyal followers that listen through the entire podcast episode, thank you for that. So yes, today's topic is information overload and attention economics. So, okay, how does that tie into my story? When I got back from my military deployment more than 2 years ago, I was reintroduced to information, right, which became an overload. Again, I had a set path, a set pattern when I was in the Middle East. I, for example, did not have to worry about the responsibilities of washing dishes, taking care of my child, which I love. Didn't have a dog at the time, household duties, et cetera, et cetera. It was mission focus and calling back home every now and then, and that was it. When I got back, I was completely overloaded with family and friends needing things from me, right? And they weren't coming off needy, though I may have perceived it that way. I may have deciphered it that way. But they wanted to see me, or at that time I had family members that were watching my house, and they're just pointing out all the things that needed to get fixed. And again, not taking into account the fact that I was in a set pattern of not having all this information hitting at me. On top of all that, I was surrounded by all the digital media. Now, it was one thing to check up on social media when I was deployed. It's another thing to be bombarded by information overload, commercials, et cetera, et cetera. And it led to me being very anxious. Okay, I had absolute feelings of being overwhelmed. It was a shock to the system. And what I noticed is that I think we're all used to it. We get used to it. And in a way, absorbing so much information becomes a part-time job that goes over your head or under the radar, depending the way you look at it. But that's how it's become, right? Just look at not only how much information you receive every day, right, on your phone, emails, texts, social media, videos, cat memes, et cetera, but it's also how much information we have to then respond to. So the whole Pavlovian theory of, instead of the bell that gets the dog's attention, it's the fact that we get a notification on Facebook or Instagram, et cetera. And we have to almost feel like we're accountable to all the information that we're getting. So that's what this entire podcast is going to be about. First half is going to go into information overload, and then we're going to get into attention economics, and I'll finish it up talking about how this all ties into the digital dating apps. Stay tuned. Hey, how's it going? If you've ever thought about making your own podcast and you kind of get into that analysis paralysis, you don't know how to start, check out Anchor. I'm telling you right now, Anchor is at the edge of technology. It's the easiest way for you to get your podcast going. I mean, all you have to do is you start it up on your phone. You don't need any kind of crazy setup and advanced microphones or whatnot. You can do it off your phone or computer. And the cool thing about Anchor is that it automatically distributes it out to the most popular podcast platforms, right? So what I'm talking about is it can get it to you on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make money off your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's easy. And it's kind of an all-in-one. So check out Anchor, get your ideas, get your motivation out there into the public space. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started, okay? Download the app or anchor.fm to get started. So what is information overload? Well, I found some really interesting names that they also go by: infobesity, infoxication, information anxiety, and information explosion. And in summary, it's the difficulty in understanding an issue and effectively making decisions when one has too much information about that issue, generally associated with the excessive quantity of daily information, as I've alluded to. And the term was actually popularized in a 1964 book called The Managing of Organizations. And later on, Alvin Toffler popularized it in 1970 in a book called Future Shock, where he stated that if the input exceeds the processing capacity, information overload occurs, which is likely to reduce the quality of the decisions. And I actually like that definition a lot, because what's interesting is how the pendulum swings when it comes to history. Again, 1970, so we're talking, 40, 50 years ago, we were already looking at how too much information, aka the paradox of choices, right? Too much choices, too much information paralyzes us, analysis paralysis, if you want to look at it that way. And we're at the pinnacle of receiving information. There's no other era where we have had to use more than our capacity to balance all kinds of things, right? We're supposed to be more efficient with technology, and in some ways we have become more efficient. We could ideally tell a whole bunch of folks that we're doing okay if we just got out surgery, right? We don't have to call each and every individual person. When it comes to the news, we don't have to flip the channels to see what's going on or to get two sides of the story. We can go on our computer, we can go on our smartphone or tablets, and in some ways it's become more efficient. Now, the problem with the cause of information overload is that too much is being created. All right, there's too much information available to us, even if we become more efficient at gathering and processing the information. So, some of the most common reasons behind modern information overload is, yes, huge volumes of new information. Also, pressure to create and compete in information provision. It leads to quantity over quality. We see this in the news a lot, where getting the story out is more important than getting the right story out. Stay with me. This will all tie into information, dating, et cetera, et cetera. It's very simple to create and duplicate information online, right? So you either hear it by repetition, which cements your belief, or the opposite. It angers you because you see it more than once. And exponential outlets, there's exponential channels to receive that information: radio, television, print, media, websites, email, RSS feeds, social media, et cetera, et cetera. This is where it's good, is the increasing weight of historical data that's available to us. If we're doing a report for school, we can access some sort of scholarly article or something that gives us empirical data, which is obviously very useful, but everything in moderation. I laugh again because I'm creating this on the eve of the elections 2020, and it's a high volume of conflicting and inaccurate information on both sides of the aisle. And there's really no simple methodology for processing, comparing, and evaluating information sources, right? I know like Facebook and some of these other places are trying to do fact check, right? They're trying to ensure that you have the right information and you're not viewing things that are distorted, but that in itself has become a little bit erroneous. We found out, and unethical in some ways, because the information that's being fact checked may be biased in what's being fact checked versus what's not being fact checked, and that's a little bit unfair when you're trying to come down to a result of what you feel about something, especially like social political realm, which goes into the lack of clear structure in groups of information and poor clues as to the relationship between those groups. So again, it's finding out, if you have a survey of 100 people and they all believe, a certain candidate or a social belief is the right thing, and then you actually find out that the 100 people were all a certain political party or certain ethnicity, but some people are just going to go off the fact that, hey, 100 people and 90 agreed. Well, let's dig a little bit deeper and look at what those surveying parameters look like. So those are causes of information overload. I'm going to tie that into dating here before we get into attention economics. Stay tuned. So without further ado, we have to find out how this all ties into dating, because I think it's fair, right? We don't want to just get another podcast. This is a dating doc. We got a diagnosis. We got to find out what is the underlying issue at hand here. So information overload, how does that apply? So let's take a look at how many apps some people are on. We'll take the online example. You can go through 3 or 4 apps, swipe left, swipe right, message, match, send messages, and you get to a point where you have so much information you're processing that your creativity and wit goes out the window, right? Where now you can't even get beyond the hey or the hi or the hello or the good night or how's your day messages. Very simplified messages because, again, our processing capacity is at its limit. And deep down, many of us want to connect. It doesn't matter if it's short-term, long-term, FWB, open relationship. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship you want. We want to connect. That's what makes someone more than just a photo on a profile. It makes them a human. It makes them someone that you're motivated in getting to know. But when you're processing so much information on the outside of dating, again, through all the things that we're doing, and your escape becomes more information overload, right? You're taking breaks from social media, ironically, watching more information. And then you're so confused, you don't know if social media is the break or if it's just part of that work that is taxing your brain to the point that when you jump on the online piece, you have no energy for anyone else. And you just have fun matching. Now, the companies like Match Group Limited, they're aware of this. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more on the attention economics part. But keep this in mind is that information overload is happening at this very second. Some people have either tuned off to this podcast or it's background noise, or they're attentively listening. Thank you very much. Hopefully my voice isn't so soothing that it puts you to sleep, right? And, I'm hoping that you can snap out of it if you are someone who's addicted to the apps, but you're not connected with anyone. Might be the information overload piece, okay? You may even feel that pressure to create these matches and you want quantity over actually quality messages. It's not going to get you anywhere. So let's get into attention economics. We got to talk about what exactly they're doing behind the scenes to pimp your brain for some cash. Attention economics ties in very much with information overload. It's an approach to management of information, treats human attention as a scarce commodity, and applies economic theory to solve various information management problems. According to Matthew Crawford, attention is a resource. A person only has so much of it. So if you don't think that the swipe, the advent of swiping technology when it comes to dating apps is a new thing, you're wrong. There used to be an app called Hot or Not back in the early 2000s that popularized. That time, it wasn't a swipe left or swipe right. You would hit an X if you're interested in the person, and I believe it might have been a thumbs up or something of that sort if you like the person. So it's been around for some time, and it was a very simplified way of you making shallow judgments on someone. To the point that people now, they don't even fill out their profile information because they feel there's no value in the content of a person's character. They'd rather just put these over-sexualized photos and hope for the best. And then some actually do care. And then they meet those that have the over-sexualized and no content type profiles. And when quality meets bored quantity, results may vary, right? So attention is focused mental engagement on a particular item of information, right? So items come into our awareness, we attend to a particular item, and then we decide whether to act. Shopping habits, right? You see something, you like it, you buy it. You see something, you kind of like it, you're distracted. So again, this is what attention economics is about grabbing that information, getting it, because we know you only have so much of it, and we understand, we as in those that are in the sphere of trying to grab your attention like I'm doing right now, that your attention span is a scarce commodity. You only have so much in that gas tank called attention span, and we want to try to grab some of it by good, bad, or ugly. Software applications either explicitly or implicitly take attention economy into consideration in their user interface design. Again, this goes back into the design of Tinder versus something like other apps that I'm going to allude to here in a second. And you create filters and make sure that viewers are presented with information that is most relevant and that you're interested in, and personalized, right? So you've seen that. You might be thinking of your favorite show, you had a discussion, and all of a sudden you see it on Facebook or Instagram being advertised, and you're like, what the heck? I was just thinking about this. Well, it was obviously on your mind. Your attention was turned to it. So let's see if you can, try to convert a shopper. And it's not a good or bad thing. I hate to say this, it is what it is nowadays. You yourself, you have more power than what you know when it comes to your attention span, but it's very under the radar to realize that, oh man, I really don't have that much of an attention span, and my shopping habits are based on very short decision making, very decisive decision making. So this is what attention economics boils down to. And when it comes to Match Group limited companies, for example, I would say the more popular ones like Tinder, Match, especially, they've even Match has Tinderized their website. They were heavy on quality over quantity, in my humble opinion, and they've switched over to these quick ADD, attention, deficit disorder type of folks, where you can just go in, match, send a quick message, and get out. Again, there's really no connection happening there. I do, however, feel that Hinge separates itself. I'm going to do an entire podcast episode on which I feel are the best apps out there by rank. But the issue is that, romance, courtship, and heck, even trust prior to entering the bedroom requires some organic and natural flow. I mean, it does. You got to have something natural when it comes to dating and courtship. Can you imagine if there was an app that would force a plant to grow? That's kind of what's happening right now, is you are pimping dating and courting. Again, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship you want, even if it's just a booty call. They've pimped it to a point where they just want your cash. They want your quick money because they know your attention span is limited because you're distracted with 20 other apps and work and life and the news. So might as well make it quick. You can't make dating quick. Okay. And I don't mean just a physical. You just can't. That's why people hit dating fatigue a lot faster. So it's what I call a slaughterhouse of connection. These apps, again, other than I would say Hinge, which I'm going to do an episode about. I'm getting no commission from them, by the way, no sponsorship. Slaughterhouse of connections, churning out one empty connection after the other. It ends up leaving people very bitter and at disarray about will they ever meet someone. That's what's happening. You right now, your attention span is being pimped by the apps if you're using digital dating apps. It's up to you to reverse that cycle and take control of your own dating life. If you know that people fall victim to that information overload and they treat you like a piece of entertainment rather than someone they'd rather connect with, and hey, don't waste your time. Your time is valuable. Your attention span is valuable. Focus that the right way, and you may end up meeting the person you're supposed to. So what do you think? Have you suffered from attention overload? Have you seen examples of how attention economics comes into play, whether it's your shopping or your friends or family that may just have no attention left and they're addicts to information overload? Literally, it's almost like they're burned out. Their brain is fried and all they can do is just be on the phone, completely being overloaded by digital. Let us know what you think. I would love to hear from you as well. So until next time, and yes, let's stay a little bit peaceful after tomorrow. Thank you.